Chinese companies buying American technology have sparked a campaign in the Defense Department against adversarial capital. But policymakers may have the motivation behind the buying spree wrong. Elsa Kania is an Adjunct Senior Fellow at the Center for a New American Security, writing about military civil fusion in China in Defense One. Elsa, welcome. Thanks for coming on the program. What prompted you to want to address these myths as you see them in the way that people think about China?
Good morning. Thank you, and glad to be here. So this commentary is based off of ongoing analysis I've been pursuing, including in a recent report with the Center for New American Security, looking at some of these myths and realities around military-civil fusion in collaboration with my colleague Laurent Lascai. And our initial impetus for writing this report was concern and also some surprise that a concept that was rather obscure for those of us who were analysts of the Chinese military and defense industry had suddenly become a talking point and even hashtag for American policymakers over the past 4 years, including statements from former Vice President Pence and former Secretary of State Pompeo, some of which seem to mischaracterize or overestimate the extent to which military-civil fusion as a strategy was succeeding or had achieved in practice the fusion that the strategy aspires to create. And I think certainly we've seen a drastic transition in recent years in U.S. policy towards China, and certainly course corrections that have been overdue and necessary, yet also at times with that, shifts in discourse that can be counterproductive and result in poor policy outcomes as well, and sometimes military-civil fusion becoming a rationale for all kinds of responses that are sometimes unrelated to the core of the strategy itself. Even the ban on TikTok was initially justified because of the company's supposed contributions to military-civil fusion, but that was later rejected by a judge as a pretty flimsy rationale, given the limited evidence that TikTok had anything to do with the Chinese military. So I think certainly there are a lot of a lot of questions and challenges at stake when we think about how to reorient U.S.-China relations in the realm of emerging technologies, and having a precise understanding of how PRC policies work and the degree to which there is success or in some cases efforts falling short of the hype and propaganda is important to recognize as American policymakers are grappling with questions on directions for our responses going forward.
You write about 4 myths, you and your colleagues, and I want to go to the 4th one. Apologies for taking them out of order. You write, MCF doesn't actively involve nearly every Chinese enterprise at this stage. That comes, I think, from a perception that in order to operate in any kind of large way in the Chinese economy, you have to at least have the blessing, the endorsement of the CCP and the Chinese government. Is that wrong? Do people who hold that perception hold it incorrectly?
So I think certainly the political economy in China is unique given the intense and increasing influence of the party state and the ways in which the party interacts with the tech sector that are often opaque and do raise questions about risks and concerns of due diligence. But I think when it comes to military-civil fusion in particular, sometimes the idea of fusion implies or is characterized as if any high-tech enterprise in China is likely to be working with or transferring its technologies directly to the Chinese military. And while sure, some Chinese military officers and scientists would love for that to be the case, in actuality, military-civil fusion as a strategy was introduced as a response to the incompleteness of that integration, or the fact that within China, state-owned enterprises had often been relatively ineffective or lagging in terms of innovation, and the Chinese military had been procuring from more traditional stakeholders in the defense industry, and MCF, with its launch, especially since 2015, has been intended to push the Chinese military to engage more in working with new commercial enterprises that are more at the cutting edge of emerging technologies, and certainly the participation by a range of stakeholders across Chinese universities, as well as startups and leading companies has increased somewhat. I think certainly it is an exaggeration to say that any technology in China is automatically available to the military. Some of the same questions of bureaucracy and challenges of procurement that the U.S. military has grappled with can also arise and provoke some challenges as the PLA is seeking to adapt to this evolving technological conditions against the backdrop of what is regarded as both an industrial revolution as well as a revolution in military affairs.
Elsa, there's a lot more I'd like to cover, and unfortunately we're out of time. I look forward to having you come back to continue the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.